Hi, welcome to our channel of ignou audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Social Sciences, SOSS, Master's Degree Programs, MA in Psychology, MAPC, Second Year, MPCE 0 to 1 Counseling Psychology, Block-4 Counseling for Mental Disorders, Unit-2 Personality Disorder, 2.0 Introduction. Personality is the characteristics or qualities that form an individual's character. For example, the way they feel, behave, and their pattern of thoughts all make up someone's personality, and this is what makes each person the individual they are. Generally speaking, someone's personality does not normally change very much, but it can develop as people go through different experiences in life and as their circumstances change. People are usually flexible enough to learn from past experiences and change their behavior to cope with life more effectively, but if someone has a personality disorder, they are likely to find this more difficult. In this unit, we learn about personality disorders. We start with nature of personality disorders and follow it up with origin of and different types of personality. Under this, we discuss different types of personality even in normal persons. Then we discuss the features of personality disorders followed by causes of personality disorders. Then we present the clusters of personality disorders followed by treatment of personality disorders. 2.1 Objectives. After completing this unit, you will be able to times define personality and personality disorders, times explain nature of personality disorders, times trace the origin and diagnosis of personality disorders, times elucidate the types of personality disorders, and times describe the treatment for personality disorders. To point to nature of personality disorders. The term personality disorder simply refers to a diagnostic category of psychiatric disorders characterized by a chronic, inflexible, and maladaptive pattern of relating to the world. This maladaptive pattern is evident in the way a person thinks, feels, and behaves. The most noticeable and significant feature of these disorders is their negative effect on interpersonal relationships. A person with an untreated personality disorder is rarely able to enjoy sustained, meaningful, and rewarding relationships with others, and any relationships they do form are often fraught with problems and difficulties. To be diagnosed with a personality disorder does not mean that someone's personality is fatally flawed or that they represent some freak of nature. In fact, these disorders are not that uncommon and are deeply troubling and painful to those who are diagnosed with these disorders. Studies on the prevalence of personality disorders performed in different countries and amongst different populations suggest that roughly 10% of adults can be diagnosed with a personality disorder, unlike many types of disorders that are indicated by symptoms that are not usually found in the general population. Example, seizures. Personality disorders cannot be understood independently from healthy personalities. Since everyone has a personality, but not everyone has seizures, personality disorders reflect a variant form of normal, healthy personality. Thus, a personality disorder exists as a special case of a normal, healthy personality in much the same way as a square is a special case of the more general construct of a rectangle. Therefore, it is useful for us to begin our discussion of personality disorders by first discussing the broader, more general construct of personality. The term personality disorder describes various clusters of symptoms and slots different groups into separate categories of disorder. There are many different types, and it is not uncommon for someone with one type of personality disorder to have other types of personality disorder as well. Personality disorders are long-standing, maladaptive, inflexible ways of relating to the environment. Such disorders can usually be noticed in childhood or at least by early adolescence and may continue through adult life. They severely limit an individual's approach to stress, producing situations because his characteristic styles of thinking and behavior allow for only a rigid and narrow range of responses. They may have great difficulty controlling their impulses and emotions and often have distorted perceptions of themselves and others. As a result, these individuals may suffer enormous pain and have significant difficulty functioning at home, work, and in relationships. Families commonly endure episodes of explosive anger and rage, extreme depression. Example: person rarely gets out of bed, self-mutilation, self-inflicted cuts and burns, and suicide attempts by family members with personality disorders. These individuals are often referred to treatment by loved ones who recognize a troubling pattern or who have reached their personal limit in trying to cope with them. Case 1. Sunita is 37 years old, married, and the mother of 2 children. She experiences unstable moods and has repeatedly cut herself, usually when feeling very stressed or abandoned. She often feels empty and bored. She has abused alcohol and drugs in the past. She is extremely sensitive to criticism and angrily reacts to perceived rebuffs. Personality disorders usually become noticeable in adolescence or early adulthood, but sometimes starts in childhood. It can make it hard for people with a personality disorder to start and keep friendships or other relationships and may find it hard to work effectively with other people. People with mild personality disorders usually manage to live normal lives, but in times of increased stress, the symptoms of the personality disorder are likely to impact seriously on how they think and feel, and they can find it hard to cope. 2.3 Origin and different types of personality. A personality disorder, as defined in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, 4th edition, text revision, DSM-IVTR, is an enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that differs markedly from the expectations of the individuals. Culture is pervasive and inflexible, has an onset in adolescence or early adulthood, is stable over time, and leads to distress or impairment. Personality disorders are a long-standing and maladaptive pattern of perceiving and responding to other people and to stressful circumstances. 10 personality disorders, grouped into 3 clusters, i.e. A, B, C, are defined in the DSM-40R. Disordered patterns of behavior characterized by relatively fixed and inflexible, lifelong reactions to stress. Individuals may show repetitive, maladaptive, and frequently self-defeating patterns of behavior, inadequate handling of impulses, or restricted and inappropriate feelings. The individual has a limited variety of responses to stress, and in the face of failure to cope may show anxiety, denial, or psychotic behavior. In the absence of environmental frustration, he tends to show little anxiety or mental or emotional symptoms. And the behavior patterns are said to be egosyntonic, i.e., they are felt by the person to be normal and right. Thus, such a person rarely seeks help because of his own anxiety and discomfort. More often he is referred by a family or society with whom he is unable to live in harmony. If the patient seeks help, it usually follows environmental frustrations and he shows typical neurotic symptoms and conflicts. The maladaptive behavior patterns seen in personality disorders tend to be exaggerations of mechanisms used at times by most people. Diagnosis of personality disorders is based on behavioral manifestations and patterns and need not reflect a subjective sense of conflict or distress. Frequently, Though one recognizes low self-esteem, paucity or relative superficiality of intimate relationships, difficulty in sustaining interests, low frustration tolerance, difficulty in postponing gratification, and inability to learn from experience, the causes of these disorders are unknown, but constitutional factors may play a role in some instances. Schizoid, cyclothymic, antisocial personalities. In general, it is assumed that patterns of response are a result of early experiences and conditioning, and that early interpersonal relationships are important in establishing modes of defense and their rigidity. 2.3.1 Paranoid personality. These people tend to be hypersensitive, with an underlying suspicion of others and their motivations. They are often rigid and inflexible in behavior and react poorly to criticism or suggestions for change. They feel isolated and project onto others harmful motives and blame for misfortune. It is assumed that these traits are the person's ways of dealing with feelings about himself which he regards as unacceptable, demeaning, or dangerous. Often the suspicious attitude leads to aggressive feelings and or behavior with resultant further isolation. The individual's sense of self-adequacy and self-esteem seems particularly impaired. Often the behavior of these people is designed to prove their adequacy, while their sense of worthiness becomes exaggerated and is accompanied by belittlement of others. In many spheres, they may be highly efficient and conscientious, though lacking flexibility. Positions of power and recognition may be achieved, but frequently at the expense of the ability to relax and to maintain a sense of humor. Often their suspiciousness and hostility bring about rejection by others, which seems to justify their original feelings, but they are unable to see their own part in this cycle. They may be litigious, especially when they feel a sense of righteous indignation. 2.3.2 Cyclothymic personality. Behavior is frequently characterized by alternating and recurrent states of depression or elation. While elated, these persons feel active and outgoing, are ambitious, optimistic, and enthusiastic, and may show high levels of energy. At such times they are gregarious and capable of attracting friends who may find them fascinating though unpredictable or eccentric. Periods of depression are characterized pessimism, low levels of energy, and a sense of hopelessness and worry. Moods of cheerfulness and sadness are part of normal behavior, and no doubt there is a continuum with cyclothymic personalities. However, with a cyclothymic disorder, the mood swings are precipitated more by internal than external events, tend to be more intense, and are apt to be cyclic. At times there is not a regular swing from high to low moods but, rather, a more sustained depression or euphoria. It is uncertain whether the cyclothymic personality disorder lies on a continuum with manic-depressive illness or is a different entity. 2.3.3 Schizoid personality. These persons are oversensitive, withdrawn, seclusive, and shy, and avoid close or prolonged relationships. They may be characterized as eccentric and their thinking as autistic, somewhat idiosyncratic but without loss of reality testing. Daydreaming is common, with difficulty in expressing feelings and detachment. The range of adaptive responses is limited and withdrawal is the main reaction to stress. Often they develop highly stylized and distinct interests which further separate them from their peers, and, in general, their attention is directed to social endeavors. 2.3.4 Explosive personality. This pattern is characterized by sudden, tantrum-like outbursts of rage or verbal or physical aggressiveness. Despite guilty and regretful feelings, these individuals are unable to control their outbursts. They are easily excited by environmental frustrations. Recently, questions have been raised as to whether underlying minor organic brain changes predispose to this explosiveness. 2.3.5 Obsessive-compulsive personality patterns of behavior are characterized by concern for perfection and orderliness, conformity to social norms, and high personal standards of conscience. Persons with this reaction have difficulty dealing with ambiguous situations, need to define, compartmentalize, and conceptualize problems, and also show some rigidity, inhibition, and difficulty in relaxing. There is a drive to control the situation and to reduce ambiguity. When faced with new, uncertain, and complex situations, they display anxiety. The quality of compulsiveness is in tune with Western cultural standards, and when the disorder is not too marked, these people are often capable of high levels of achievement, especially in the sciences and academic fields where order is desirable. On the other hand, they often feel a sense of isolation and difficulty with interpersonal relationships in which one must rely on others and in which one's feelings are less under strict control and events are less predictable. 2.3.6 Hysterical, histrionic personality. This pattern is characterized by dramatic and attention-seeking behavior, excitability, emotional instability and overreactivity, self-centeredness, and a provocativeness or sexualization of non-sexual relationships often combined with sexual frigidity or fears. Though superficially self-assured, such people have major doubts as to their identity and goals. Their difficulty in expressing genuine feelings further prevents intimate relationships. Such relationships are affected by the individual's seemingly insatiable need for affection. Behind their sexually seductive behavior lies a childlike wish for non-sexual affection and protection. 2.3.7 Asthenic personality. This category is characterized by lack of enthusiasm, low energy and capability, difficulty in developing a broad sense of enjoyment and pleasure, and a poor response to even small physical or emotional stresses. These persons never seem to mobilize resources to meet distress and, as a result, feel helpless, wishing they could do more but seemingly unable to feel up to doing it. 2.3.8 Antisocial personality. This pattern, formerly referred to as sociopathic, includes those whose behavior is repetitively in conflict with social mores. Delinquent behavior is not the sole pattern, but is accompanied by impulsiveness, irresponsibility, either a low sense of guilt or guilt that appears only after an event, callousness toward others, and a superficiality of emotional involvement. These people seem to have a keen capacity for rationalizing and explaining their behavior as a consequence of another's. They also show little foresight. Onset is usually before age 12 to 15. Typical childhood symptoms are theft, lack of discipline, and truancy, together with habit disturbances such as enuresis, sleepwalking, and nail-biting. As adults, they have continued problems with school, poor work records, and unstable marital histories, besides showing belligerency, social isolation, sexual deviations, and frequently excessive alcohol or drug use. They also complain of anxiety and somatic complaints. The disorder is preponderant in males. There is some evidence to believe that there is a maturing out of the disorder between ages 30 and 40, followed by a decrease in gross antisocial behavior. 2.3.9 Passive-aggressive personality. This group is subdivided into passive, passive-aggressive, and aggressive types. The passive type is characterized by helplessness, indecisiveness, and a clinging dependency even when given support from others. Such passivity may serve to gain attention and affection, to avoid responsibility, and/or to control others covertly. Passive-aggressive behavior is characterized by obstinacy, inefficiency, procrastination, and sullenness, often disguised under a superficial compliance. Frequently, these people agree to perform a task and then proceed to subtly undermine its completion with complaints and passive obstructionism. The aggressive type is characterized by sullenness, tantrum-like behavior, provocativeness, and argumentativeness, especially with those in authority. Such behavior usually serves to deny or conceal marked dependency needs. The behavior is maladaptive in that, ironically, it drives others away and prevents the individual from receiving even a normal amount of support. 2nd March 2010. Inadequate personality. The term describes individuals whose response to any form of stress seems ineffectual. Their behavior shows poor judgment, ineptness, lack of energy, poor long-range planning, and poor performance. Incentive is lacking, especially to achieve culturally desired levels. These people are marginally involved in social relationships, tend to drift, and take non-demanding jobs. There is no evidence for physical or mental defects. However, there does seem to be some social value judgment essential to this diagnosis, since those diagnosed as inadequate personalities tend to be in the lower socioeconomic level. On the other hand, this may reflect early social, cultural, and experiential deprivation which, together with the repeated experience of failure, leads to passive styles of behavior. Often these people are welfare recipients or reside in institutions. 2nd March 2011. Sexual deviations. This category refers to those who repetitively and somewhat compulsively direct their sexual interests toward objects other than the opposite sex, toward sexual acts not associated with intercourse, or toward intercourse only when associated with stylized behavior, example, sexual sadism. The term carries a moral connotation and is somewhat related to cultural norms. However, it is believed that this behavior reflects at least developmental difficulties, if not psychopathology, and that deviant sexual behavior is an attempt to achieve some sexual gratification while avoiding fears associated with usual adult sexual practices. Clinicians use different theories to explain the origin and development of each of these disorders. Some argue that personality disorders are inherited, while others suggest that the environment in which we grow up is responsible for our personality traits. 2.4 Diagnosis. Personality disorders are diagnosed on DSM-4's axis 2 and they are near permanent disorders. On the other hand, axis I disorders are called symptom disorders which may come and go. Symptom disorders may be triggered by events or environmental factors and may disappear when conditions change. People with axis I disorders often see themselves as having personal problems, symptoms that are troublesome and require treatment. People with axis II disorders are far more likely to say that their difficulties are attributable to the environment and that they do not require clinical treatment. Clinicians also differ on diagnosis. For example, when a highly unpredictable, exuberant patient walks into a psychiatrist's room, one psychiatrist might diagnose him as having antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy, while another might say that he has borderline personality disorder. This is because the diagnostic methods used, such as questionnaires, are not very reliable. However, better methods are being devised that might show more of a clear pattern for diagnosis, even across different cultures. 2.5 Features of personality disorders. The features of personality disorders are times early onset. This is evident at least since late adolescence. Times stability. No significant period when not evident. Times pervasive. This is evident across a wide range of personal, social and occupational situations. Times clinically significant maladaptation resulting in personal distress or impairment in social and occupational functioning. 2.6 Causes of personality disorders. There is no single cause of personality disorder. It is thought that a combination of factors may contribute to people being vulnerable to the development of a personality disorder due to genetic factors. However, it may be related more to the fact that people affected have not had the opportunity to learn at an early age how to act or react and manage their feelings. A personality disorder may also relate to incidents or traumas in childhood like physical or sexual abuse or where there have been difficulties in parenting. Figures show that around 80% of those diagnosed with borderline personality disorder have been diagnosed as having a childhood trauma. Dissociative identity disorder, previously referred to as multiple personality disorder, and other dissociative disorders are now understood to be fairly common side effects of severe traumas in childhood. Personality disorders are more common when stress levels are high. So treatment tends to focus on coping and learning how to relate to others. This is because people diagnosed with personality disorders have often missed the opportunity in childhood to learn how to cope and manage their feelings. Many people do not even know they have a personality disorder. They may just think that they are miserable and that their lives are pointless. Part of the problem is they are not able to think about their feelings. So they may even resort to drugs and alcohol, self-harm or even overdoses, which make things worse. The role of causal factors in personality disorders is not known much, as these disorders received attention only since the publication of DSM-3 and also because they are less amenable to study. One major problem in studying the causes of personality disorders stems from the high level of comorbidity among them. Patients who are qualified for one personality disorder diagnosis also qualified for one or more than one other personality disorders. Another problem is that many people with these disorders are never seen by clinical personnel. 2.6.1 Biological factors. It has been suggested that infants' constitutional reaction tendencies, high or low vitality, behavioral inhibition, may predispose them to the development of particular personality disorders. As most of the personality traits are found to be moderately heritable, there is increasing evidence for genetic contributions to certain personality disorders like paranoid personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. Some progress is also made in understanding the psychobiological substrate of at least some of the personality disorders. For example, people with borderline personality disorder appear to be characterized by lowered functioning of the neurotransmitter serotonin, due to which they show impulsive aggressive behavior, as in parasuicidal acts such as cutting their arms with a knife. Patients with borderline personality disorder may also show disturbances in the regulation of noradrenergic neurotransmitters that are similar to those seen in chronic stress conditions such as PTSD. Moreover, deficits in the dopamine system may be related to a disposition toward transient psychotic symptoms. 2.6.2 Psychological factors. Early learning experiences are usually assumed to contribute the most in predisposing a person to develop a personality disorder. Numbers of studies have suggested that abuse and neglect in childhood may be related to the development of certain personality disorders. Patients with borderline personality disorder reported significantly higher rates of abuse than patients with other personality disorders. Psychodynamic theorists also expressed their views on the causes of personality disorders. For example, With regard to narcissistic personality disorder, they believed all children go through a phase of primitive grandiosity during which they think that all events and needs revolve around them. For a normal development to occur beyond this phase, parents must do some mirroring of the infant's grandiosity. This disorder is also likely to develop if parents are neglectful, devaluing or unempathetic to the child. 2.6.3 Sociocultural factors. The role of sociocultural factors is not clearly found. However, the changing culture, emphasis on impulse gratification, instant solutions and pain-free benefits are leading more people to develop the self-centered lifestyles that we see in more extreme forms in the personality disorders. 2.7 Clusters of personality disorders. There are 10 different types of personality disorder. Each one is linked with a different set of attitudes, emotions and behaviors. These personality disorders are grouped into 3 clusters, A, B and C. 2.7.1 Cluster A Personality disorders. Cluster A features odd or eccentric behavior. The personality disorders in this cluster include 1. Paranoid personality disorder. People with this disorder can be cold and detached and find it hard to form relationships. They are often suspicious in their surroundings and can act angrily towards other people. This distrust and suspiciousness is indicated by 4 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Suspects, without sufficient basis, that others are exploiting, harming, or deceiving him or her. 2. Preoccupied with unjustified doubts about the loyalty or trustworthiness of friends or associates. 3. Reluctant to confide in others because of unwarranted fear that the information will be used against him or her. 4. Reads hurtful or threatening meanings into kind remarks or events. 5. Unforgiving of insults or injuries. 6. Perceives attacks on his or her character or reputation that are not apparent to others and is quick to react angrily. 7. Has recurrent suspicions, without justification, regarding faithfulness of spouse or sexual partner. 2. Schizoid personality disorder. People diagnosed with this disorder can be cold, distant and reclusive, shying away from closeness or intimacy. They can get caught up in their own thoughts and hold back from getting involved with other people. This pattern is indicated by 4 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Neither desires nor enjoys close relationships, including family relationships. 2. Often chooses activities that don't involve other people. 3. Has little interest in having sexual relations with another person. 4. Enjoys few activities. 5. Lacks close friends other than immediate family. 6. Appears indifferent to praise or criticism. 7. Shows emotional coldness, detachment, or little emotional expression. 3. Schizotypal personality disorder. It has the same traits as the schizoid personality disorder. But, in addition to the above, they can have chaotic thoughts and views and are poor communicators. This disorder is indicated by 5 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Ideas of reference, i.e., believes that casual and external events have a particular and unusual meaning that is specific to him or her. 2. Odd beliefs or magical thinking that influences behavior and is inconsistent with cultural norms. Example, belief in superstitions or clairvoyance, telepathy, or sixth sense. 3. Unusual perceptual experiences. Example, hears a voice murmuring his or her name, reports bodily illusions. 4. Odd thinking and speech. Example, unusual phrasing, speech which is vague, overly elaborate, and wanders from the main point. 5. excessively suspicious thinking. 6. Inappropriate or constricted emotions. Reduced range and intensity of emotion, behavior or appearance that is odd or peculiar. Example, unusual mannerisms, avoids eye contact, wears stained, ill-fitting clothes, lack of close friends or confidence other than immediate family. Excessive social anxiety that remains despite familiarity with people and social situation. The anxiety relates more to suspiciousness about others' motivations than to negative judgments about self. 2.7.2 Cluster B personality disorders. Cluster B features dramatic, emotional or erratic behavior. The personality disorders in this cluster include a. Borderline personality disorder. People with this disorder have a shaky, unsure view of themselves and have problems with relationships. They can be moody and see things in black and white. They feel they lost out on nurturing as children and can become very needy and clingy as adults. When their needs are not met, they feel empty, angry and abandoned and may react in a desperate and impulsive way. This pattern begins by early adulthood, occurs in various contexts, and is indicated by 5 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Frantic efforts, excluding suicidal or self-inflicted cuts or burns, to avoid real or imagined abandonment. 2. A pattern of intense and unstable interpersonal relationships that may quickly alternate between extremes of idealization. The other person may be put on a pedestal and devaluation. The other person's negative qualities are now exaggerated. 3. Identity disturbance, sudden and dramatic shifts in self-image in terms of shifting values. Example, sexual identity, types of friends, and vocational goals. 4. Impulsiveness in at least 2 areas that are potentially harmful. Example, spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating, excluding, suicidal or self-mutilating behavior. 5. Repeated suicidal behavior or threats, or self-inflicted cuts or burns. Example, self-mutilating behavior. 6. Significant, sudden changes in mood and observable emotion. Example, intense periodic sadness, irritability, or anxiety, usually lasting a few hours and rarely lasting more than a few days. Extreme reactivity to interpersonal stresses. 7. Chronic feelings of emptiness, also may be easily bored. 8. Inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. Example, frequent displays of temper, constant anger, recurrent physical fights, temporary, stress-related psychosis, symptoms such as paranoia or grossly distorted body image. B. Antisocial personality disorder. People diagnosed with this disorder disregard the feelings, property and authority of others. They often have violent and aggressive behaviors and tend to show a lack of remorse. Individuals with antisocial personality disorder show a pervasive disregard for and violation of the rights of others since age 15 years, as indicated by 3 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Repeated acts that are grounds for arrest. 2. Deceitfulness, i.e., repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. 3. Impulsiveness or failure to plan ahead. 4. Irritability and aggressiveness, such as repeated physical fights or assaults. 5. Reckless disregard for the safety of self or others. 6. Consistent irresponsibility, i.e., repeated failure to sustain consistent work, behavior or honor financial obligations. 7. Lack of remorse, as indicated by indifference to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. To receive this diagnosis, an individual also needs to be at least 18 years old, to show evidence of a conduct disorder, which begins before age 15, and to show antisocial behavior that does not only occur during a manic episode or the course of schizophrenia. Case 1. Krishna is 46 years old, divorced, and currently unemployed. He has worked for most of his adult life and at one time owned a business. He has a history of intense, unstable relationships and has been violent toward his wives and his children. He experiences periods of rage and frequent fighting. Usually the fights are verbal, but occasionally they are physical. When a neighbor spoke to him rudely, he seriously wounded his neighbor. He is in prison at this time. C. People diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. They display an abnormally high opinion of themselves, are oversensitive to criticism, and resent those people who do not admire them. This pattern is indicated by 5 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Has an inflated sense of self-importance, example, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without corresponding achievements. 2. Is overly concerned with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. 3. Believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people or institutions. 4. Requires excessive admiration. 5. Has a sense of entitlement, i.e., unreasonable expectations of very positive treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. 6. Takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. 7. Lacks empathy, is unwilling to identify with the feelings and needs of others. 8. Is often jealous of others or believes that others are jealous of him or her. 9. Shows arrogant or domineering behaviors or attitudes. D. People diagnosed with historic personality disorder are obsessive about their appearance and constantly demand attention. Their behavior is often seen as over the top, and they may be referred to as being shallow. This pattern is suggested by 5 or more of the following from DSM-4. American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Discomfort in situations in which he or she is not the center of attention. 2. Frequent, inappropriate, seductive or provocative behavior in interpersonal interactions. 3. Rapid shifts of emotions and shallow expression of emotions. Emotions often appear to be turned on and off too quickly to be deeply felt. 4. Consistent use of physical appearance to draw attention to self. 5. Excessively dramatic style of speech that lacks detail. Opinions are strongly presented, but underlying reasons may be vague without supporting facts and details. 6. Self-dramatic, theatrical, and exaggerated expression of emotion. 7. Easily influenced by others or circumstances. E.g. fads. 8. Views relationships as more intimate than they actually are. 2.7.3 Cluster C Personality disorders. Cluster C features anxious or fearful behavior. The personality disorders in this cluster include a. Dependent personality disorder, where people depend on their opinion and judgment. Their insecurity, indecision, and lack of self-esteem can make it difficult for them to take care of themselves. A person with dependent personality disorder shows an extreme need to be taken care of that leads to fears of separation and passive and clinging behavior. This disorder is indicated by 5 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Difficulty making daily decisions without an excessive amount of advice and reassurance from others. 2. Needs others to assume responsibility for most major areas of his or her life. 3. difficulty voicing disagreement with others because of fear of loss of support or approval, excluding realistic fears of punishment. 4. Difficulty starting projects or doing things on his or her own because of little self-confidence in judgment or abilities, rather than a lack of motivation or energy. 5. Excessively attempts to obtain support from others such that he or she volunteers to do unpleasant tasks. 6. Feels uncomfortable or helpless when alone because of exaggerated fears of being unable to care for himself or herself. 7. Urgently seeks another relationship as a source of support when a close relationship ends. 8. Overly worried about being left to take care of himself or herself. B. Avoidant personality disorder. This disorder causes people diagnosed to avoid situations which can cause conflict because they cannot face the possibility of being rejected. By doing so, however, they make their own situation worse by isolating themselves and avoid forming any relationships. An individual with avoidant personality disorder typically is socially inhibited, feels inadequate, and is oversensitive to criticism, as indicated by 4 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association. 1994. 1. Avoids work-related activities that involve much social contact because of fears of criticism, disapproval, or rejection. 2. Is unwilling to get involved with people unless certain of being liked. 3. Fears of shame or ridicule lead to excessive shyness within intimate relationships. 4. Is overly concerned with criticism and rejection in social situations. 5. Is inhibited in new social situations because of feelings of inadequacy. 6. Views self as socially incompetent, personally unappealing or inferior to others, unusually reluctant to take personal risks or do new activities because of fear of embarrassment. 7. People diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder are so inflexible in their approach to things that they become anxious and indecisive and normally end up not completing any tasks they have started. They like to be in control and have difficulty in sustaining healthy relationships. This pattern is indicated by 4 or more of the following from DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 1. Is overly concerned with details, rules, lists, order, organization, or schedules such that the major point of the activity is lost. 2. Is unable to complete a project because his or her own overly strict standards are not met. 3. Excessive emphasis on work and productivity such that leisure activities and friendships are devalued, not accounted for by obvious economic need. 4. Is overly conscientious and inflexible about issues involving morality, ethics, or values, not accounted for by cultural or religious identification. 5. Is unable to throw out worn-out or worthless objects despite lack of emotional value. 6. Is reluctant to delegate tasks or work with others unless they agree to exactly his or her way of doing things. 7. Adopts a stingy spending style toward both self and others. Money is seen as something to be gathered for future catastrophes. 8. Rigidity and stubbornness. There also is a diagnosis known as personality disorders not otherwise specified, which is separate from the above 3 groups of disorders. This diagnosis would be given for disturbed personality functioning that does not meet criteria for any specific personality disorder, but which leads to distress or harm in one or more important areas of functioning, example, social or work-related. The clinician also may give this diagnosis if a specific personality disorder that is not included in the DSM-4 classification seems to apply to an individual, example, depressive personality disorder or passive-aggressive personality disorder, DSM-4, American Psychiatric Association, 1994. 2.8 Treatment of personality disorders. There are various kinds of help available. Family doctor can be a good start, as he/she will be to refer you to someone who knows how to offer the best help. Psychological and drug therapies provide some benefit for people with personality disorders. Counseling and psychotherapy give people the chance to talk about their difficulties. Therapy aims at helping people bring their true feelings to the surface so that they can experience and understand them better. Other forms of help available include cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is a combination of cognitive therapy and behavioral therapy. It helps to weaken the links between upsetting situations and your normal reaction to them, teaching you how to calm your mind and body and feel good. It also helps you to recognize patterns that make you angry, anxious, or depressed. Medical treatment and support groups are also other forms of help available for people suffering from personality disorders. Treatment will vary depending on the view the clinician holds regarding the origins of personality disorders and will also depend on services available. In the case of psychopathy, it is thought that because people who have this diagnosis feel no emotion, it is impossible to treat them with any kind of talking therapy. The other disorders are mainly treated with a combination of drug and talking therapies. Treatment of borderline personality disorder includes the following steps: times identify disturbances, chronic feelings of emptiness or boredom, and their intolerance of being alone. These people have a strong need for involvement with others and a reliance on external support for self-definition. Times affective disturbances, reflected in their intense, inappropriate anger, emotional instability, and unstable interpersonal relationships. Times impulsive disturbances, reflected in their self-damaging acts and impulsive behaviors. 2.9 Summary. Personality disorders appear to be extreme or exaggerated patterns of personality traits that predispose an individual to maladaptive behavior. A number of personality disorders have been delineated in which there are persistent patterns of perceiving, thinking, and relating to the environment. 3 general clusters of personality disorders have been described. Cluster A, which includes individuals with paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality disorders who seem odd or eccentric. Cluster B, which includes individuals with histrionic, narcissistic, antisocial, and borderline personality disorders who share a common tendency to be dramatic, emotional, and erratic. And Cluster C, which includes individuals with avoidant, dependent, and obsessive-compulsive personality disorders who show fearfulness or tension, as in anxiety-based disorders. Research indicated that constitutional and genetic factors play a role in borderline, paranoid, schizotypal, and antisocial personality disorders. Some evidence suggests that early childhood abuse may play a role in causing borderline personality disorder. Treatment of the Cluster C disorders, which includes dependent and avoidant personality disorder, seems most promising, although a new form of cognitive behavior therapy for borderline personality disorder, dialectical behavior therapy, also shows considerable promise in treating this very serious condition. Cluster A disorders such as schizotypal and paranoid are most difficult to treat. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.